Hi Gulraj,
Hi Aditya, how are you?
welcome back to Sudeep Audio's channel.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just want to tell you this that I feel so happy about this because I think 7 years back,
Yes,
I feel really happy about the fact that I was one of the first few artists who were featured on converSAtions, and I'm so happy that it's been such a long journey. Sudeep Audio, Sudeep Audio's converSAtions. So thank you so much for having me back here. I'm really happy to be here.
and I'm very thankful that you composed the opening.
Oh, that's such a
Music.
That's a pleasure. Thank you for actually giving me that opportunity.
It has come out really well, and
Thanks.
some videos have already featured that already.
Thank you. So happy.
Great. So, Gulraj, we invited some questions
Yes.
from viewers and
Yes.
your fans as to about various points
Yeah.
about your personal journey, about your playing, about doing live shows, and your own composition production.
Yes.
many
yes,
other
yes.
things.
Yeah.
So we'll just put some interesting questions across.
Yeah. That'll be great.
So we have one from Rahul Tiwari.
Okay.
He says that as per industry norms, a composer first prepares a tune or melody and then lyricist writes lyrics on it.
Yeah.
Or suppose if you have 2 or 4 lines of a song in your mind, then how do you interact
Blend
with the
it. Yeah.
lyric
Yeah.
writer?
Yeah.
How
So,
does this work?
It's actually it's a very good question. It's a very interesting question. So the thing is, there is no fixed way of this. Like if there's nothing, for example, if you will be at the most given the situation of a song. For example, it's a romantic song. So you would want to, if there are no lyrics, you would want to just start maybe just playing some chords and getting a melody together. So first of all, I would say there is no fixed way that there has to be a melody melody first or the lyrics first. Now that is another thing, that what is comfortable with some composer, or because there are some composers probably who are comfortable making the melody first. There are some composers I know who like to have the lyrics first, and then they so that there's a starting point. And likewise in lyrics writers also, there are some writers who are comfortable in writing on a melody on a fixed meter, or just they have the basic lyrics and then the composer writes on it. So there is no fixed way on it, but it always changes. Like there are times when say for example you're doing some corporate work, or some, if it's a ad song, for example, some little song for an ad film. So there are most likely situations where there are some lyrics, some lyrics are there which are describing the product or whatever. So in that case, you have to take the words and compose the melody around it. Now when it comes to film songs, like I'll give you example of one of my songs called Pakiza. What happened was, Manoj Yadav, the lyrics writer of the song, he had given me this word Pakiza, which I really loved it. So I was driving to the studio, and I think if I remember correctly, the first thing that came to my mind was this riff, if you hear in the song. So it's like, that's the guitar riff. So that was actually ringing in my head. And then I was, because I knew Pakiza, this word, I had this information. So I was like, oh, Pakiza re, na 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 na. Rest, I was like just randomly humming and thinking of the melody. Which by the time I reached to the studio, I came to the studio, I put down this basic composition, and then the rest of the things, then the chorus line that comes, Ishq tera mera, all that happened later. So what I'm trying to say is, this process is an example where it was pretty mixed up. I had one word from the lyrics, Pakiza being the main word, which I used to, just hum something. And then the rest of the lines that I sang, like the cross and all those lines, that I had composed, and Manoj wrote lyrics to those lines. And I would say is, it's very random. The process is very random. It should be done with the ease of, the composer and the lyrics writer. Unless if there are situations, where, maybe aapko, you don't have access to lyrics, or you don't have access to lyrics writer, so you just have to present something. So it all depends on the situation.
Right. So speaking of lyrics and lyrics writer, he also wants to know, meter में लिखो, उसका मतलब क्या होता है?
Yeah. So basically, for example, meter, I would describe it as, and there are many ways to describe it. One of the ways I would say is, it's like fitting the words, in phrasing them, phrasing the words, phrasing them as in relation with the tempo of the song, and yeah, basically the pace of the song. So, for example, if there is a melody like tan da tarararam, I'm just randomly singing something. So now that is basically somewhere dictating the meter of the lyrics. It could be any lyrics. So meter mein likho, you can take this meaning also, that it has to be in that, it has to be bounded in the tempo, in the phrasing of the composition. Sometimes there are some lyrics writers who actually write on a meter without a melody also. Like a poetry, like how we sing, how we narrate a poetry, like ta ra ta ta ra ta ta ra ta ta ra. So there is already an inherent rhythm in that. So you can say even that is like, writing in the meter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have one Hasmukh Nimawat.
Okay.
He's saying where to start keyboard, piano from, grades, personal lessons, and what are the genres to learn?
Okay, so it's a very it's a question which is I don't know how to give exact answer to this, but what I would say is that if you want to, first you have to pick up your instrument. So if it's going to be piano or keyboards, my suggestion is it's good to start with Western classical music, because there's a lot of foundation, harmonic foundation and all that comes from there. And then obviously there is so much of there is jazz, then there are so many derivations out of it. But I would say that it's very subjective, because it depends on what are you wanting to be, what are you aspiring to be. If you want to be a solo pianist and stuff, I think classical Western classical music is the right. This is what I feel is the right field, is the right study to start with. And if you want to be a producer or a composer, then there are a lot of things, like I would say the objective is to be exposed to all the genres, because when you're music producing, you're not restricted to only certain style. At least I'm saying in our industry here in in the Indian film industry, in the Indian film music industry, you're never restricted to just one genre. So I think you should be open to learn things. But when you pick up an instrument, for example, if it's piano or keyboard, you can start off with maybe Western classical. And beyond that, I would like to say also that if you have access to Indian music training, you should really learn. I mean, I started learning Indian music. I started learning on the harmonium, and I see that there's a lot of strength in Indian music, especially in the formation of melody. So the blend is very beautiful. The Indian melody, and if we take the harmony section from Western music, it's a very interesting blend. So yeah, I mean, it completely depends on where you're aspiring to go.
Right. Somebody called Hardik Keys, he's asking a few questions. एक तो ये कि what to do when you get a composition for music production? So you're not the composer. Somebody gives you a song कि आप इसको produce करो. So what to do first? And then he's saying, how do you select the instruments and rhythm pattern? How do you synthesize your keyboard?
Okay.
And how I'm basically...
You must be wondering why I'm laughing, because there's something that just came to my mind. And there are times, before I answer this question, I would say there could be situations where you get a song and you may not like the song, but you have to do the song for whatever reason, So first thing you should do is you should try to get a liking for the song. You should try to like the song. And that could be done by a lot of ways. You have to keep listening to it. So getting on the exact answer now, first thing I would like to do is I would actually hear the song a couple of times, and try to understand what it is. Now sometimes some composers, they do have some rough track, like a rough, bed of arrangement already put in, which has maybe certain chords and maybe some basic rhythm pattern. So it's totally dependent on what style of music you're doing. For example, if you're doing a dance track and if you just get a raw composition, I would say the focus should be first to get the rhythm pattern and the bass lines in place, because a lot of times, in dance music we do have these motifs, phrases that come, that repeat, and which build a song. So it completely depends if you're doing a dance genre. I would like to first start with the rhythm pattern and put down the bass, and then obviously maybe if there's a bass line, that runs throughout the song. So and if it's a love song or a song which has more of harmonic content, chordal content, then probably I would like to first figure out the chords, the voicings, and then get into putting down a pattern, a rhythm pattern that holds the song together. See, because basically the rhythm pattern, the bass, these are the very fundamental foundations of a song. It just holds together the entire thing, the rhythm and the bass. I mean the drums and the bass. So I think if you put these things in place, then everything starts. Maybe bass you can still put later if there's no fixed bass pattern. It can, because the bass notes will change as per the harmony of the song. But it is, if you have rhythm pattern, there is a groove to, there is a frame you have to do various things. You're comping the chords and all that gets fixed. So this would be the starting, and then it gets into the later stage, where you're deciding sounds. If you're playing piano, or if you're playing the chords on electric piano, and then what are you layering with it. So I would say these are the basic steps to begin with, and then it's like a C.
But selection of instruments में कुछ specific way.
So it again depends on the style of music you're dealing with. So if you're dealing with dance music, you would like to have some hard-hitting synth patches, synth leads and things, that really stick out. So it is, it's a lot of things, and there's so many things that could be done. Like, I would like to probably try out if there's a melody. So I would like to maybe take one part of the melody and create it into an instrument. I would like to take it, chop it, reverse it, and then make it sound like an instrument. That's one of the ways. But then there are infinite ways to do it.
Correct. There's no formula.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you also play a lot of live with various bands.
Yes.
A.R. Rahman being one of the well-known ones. So how do you improvise in a show when you're playing your keys? Is that also a fixed way of playing, or do you kind of suddenly mood mein aa gaye to chalo yaar?
So in case of Rahman sir's music, as we all know, his music is there's a lot of his songs have very intimate layers of arrangement. There's a lot of great stuff, sonical stuff happening already with melody. So there are two parts. One is there are times when we have to stick to the parts that we have in the song. For example, if we are playing a song like Sathiya, so the riff which we all know. So this is of course I just played it on a piano, but then we have to stick with the sonic. It's basically it's a layer of flute, and it's like a Celtic flute with violin. It's got a very Celtic feel actually. So there are certain parts which we have to stick to as per the song arrangement, and then there are parts where you're expected to improvise, as you were asking, like how do you improvise. So for example, sometimes there is a section given to me. For example, if there's a song say called Hamdam, Oh Hamdam Suniya Re, and there are times when I'm asked to do an organ solo in. So maybe I may just take out the root key out of it, but I'll improvise as per the, it could be completely free. It depends. If I'm asked to improvise in the song, so it'll be very much bounded by the chord structure that's happening. If I'm just asked to improvise on my own, so I can create new things because there's no one really else playing with me. So it is very subjective on where you are asked to improvise.
But that happens before the show, right? I mean, not chalu show mein nahi bolte ki chal abhi shuru.
That also happens. So there are times when there are, say there will be one section. Maybe it will be decided at 8 bars in a certain song. Every time, maybe the keyboard player or maybe even the flute player is asked to improvise. So that could be random, but it has to be in that frame. Sometimes, like my experience with Shankar and Loy with them, they're amazing performers. So there are times when suddenly, you would be asked to, improvise and do it on the spot. So there are times that also happens. And
But how does that happen? I mean, for the sake of the viewers, के आँख मारते हैं या सीटी हो जाती है.
a lot of ways. So sometimes, the they will just tell, hey Gulraj, take it away, take it away. Yeah,
Mic में बोलेंगे.
yeah. So it's understood. So which means that you have to play a solo on it, or you have to do something.
Oh.
You have to, but at the same time maintain the energy and all those things.
Right.
So it's interesting, and I really enjoy such parts, because this is when you kind of venture out into something adventurous.
Hmm.
But it's totally dependent upon, like as I told, there are sometimes it's fixed that you will be soloing over those parts. Sometimes, as you are mentioning, it's random that someone will just ask you to solo, and the thing that counts is your preparation. And to all the keyboard players, I would say that yes, you please do practice all your scales and all that, because these are the times when you're put in a spot and you have to perform.
And इसी बात पे दिव्यांग सोलंकी ने पहले से बोल दिया, nice sir.
Thank you.
So there's one more question from Vivek Harry. He says, what have been your hardest times in your music career?
Okay.
So थोड़ा सा emotional question है. But,
Yeah.
If you could share.
Actually, I would say that, not really there is some specific hardest time, I would say, but I feel what happens to all of us as artists, as musicians, we are all very emotional people and very sensitive towards things. So we do happen to come across situations, when things are not just going the way we think of or what we expect. So, for example, there are things like, you really put in your heart and soul in making a song. And you've worked maybe the entire night and you're excited about it, and yes, wow. And then suddenly the next day in the morning, when the director or whoever is going to approve the song comes, and it takes 4 seconds to say it's not working, man. So it just puts. So I'm just saying it's a part of the thing. Now I'm also kind of got used to it, because we do fall prey to such situations, but it's somewhere, it's a bit of a situation where it becomes a bit hard, is because as a musician you think that there is something really amazing about it as a musician, but how do you convince that person? But there's another side also, that you have to understand that when you're on a commission job, for example, when you're doing music for a film or maybe a title track, so you're actually also catering to a subject. So there are going to be people who are going to make opinions or approve or disapprove your song. So I think these are some situations, that I won't say hard, but they are challenging situations. Another, but yeah, the thing is you have to cope up with it, you should not give up. So the next step is, which could be also challenging, is then how do you incorporate what you want to do and what he's saying. Now that is challenging. Another thing I would like to say, answering the same question, is, as I started off saying that, we are all very emotional people as artists. There are times when a lot of us think that, hey man, I really wish by now I should have been already doing this, or I should have been this successful or whatever. Everyone has their ways of
driving a Mercedes or something.
That. So that is an emotional time. That is a hard time when you're dealing with yourself. When you're talking to yourself that, man, I really wish I would have been this by now, or I would have been doing this by. I think that is a hard time, for everyone. It becomes very...
That expectation?
Yeah, it is. But then I want to say this. It may sound a bit philosophical, but I do believe in this. That, the thing is, when you want to do something, when you have, when you really, really very strongly focus on something, you will achieve it. And of course, you have to work also hard. It's not just keeping focus. By focus, I mean is that you concentrate in getting that, but you have to work hard in that direction. Timing could be, a factor. It may take some time, it may take less time, or it may take a lot of time. But when you very strongly think about that, I want to achieve this, I want to be at this position, you will get there. So it's very important that, it's like when you fall down, you have to get up and keep walking. That is something that has to be always there in your mind. And I very strongly believe that when you have that positivity with you, you would overcome all these hurdles and problems. So I think that's very important, that we all as musicians, because to make music or to, it's very important that you have a good state of mind. If that is not in place, things could be problematic. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So there's another question from Vansh Bhaskar. He says that, is it enough for a musician to earn from live gigs, or should they do something else also? And there's one more person who is saying Prayas Music, that, brother, is it important to live in a big city for music career?
Okay. So first question was, else as in outside music or?
हाँ मतलब survive करने के लिए is what I think that should be.
Yeah.
कि सिर्फ live पे जिंदगी निकाल सकते हो.
Well, it's a tricky question again, because first of all, it depends if you're doing live music. So, it all depends upon what setup are you into. If you're, say, performing, there are people I know who perform at fixed venues. Maybe some restaurants and all. So that you're performing there regularly. It's also a live gig setup. So that kind of guarantees that there's going to be certain kind of income returns from that place, until that place runs in good shape and all that. Then there's the other category when you're performing with other artists as a performer. Now it depends on which artist are you performing with. If you're performing with a very famous, very popular artist, say in this example, say a very popular personality from our film industry, so definitely the returns and the income will be different and it will be more. So if you can totally be dependent on your live performance, it's difficult to answer, but I would say that you should never have dependency on only one side. Now that's a different thing if the question meant outside music also, but inside music, if you're capable of doing different things, like you can play live, maybe you can play a guitar or maybe you can play the keyboards, and you're doing some live shows. It could be also your own shows. But I would still say that the ultimatum should be doing music. So you're not just stuck doing live. You also do recordings. If you're capable of producing music, you should do that. There should be all doors kept open. That's what is very important. If one also intended to ask that if something has to be done outside music, well, that's totally dependent on the survival and what are your overheads you're dealing with. See, eventually it's important to take care of your family and yourself. So it's completely subject to that. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for answering that. We have one last question from Mr. Mawani. He says, for harmonizing, could you shed some light on how to blend jazz harmonies in commercial or mainstream music so that it doesn't sound jazz but it enriches your mainstream sound?
Well, actually, jazz music. We all know it's very rich in harmonic content, and well, that's a very musical question, and maybe in this interview we may not be able to talk about it completely. But I would like to share something that a lot of times people associate jazz music with some complex chords and when you're dealing with a song, when, for example, if it's a film song, if it's a pop song, I say that what is important is the application of certain chords in relation to the song. Nothing should sound superimposed or forced. Basically, it should feel very natural. Now, one of the things I can understand probably from his question is that maybe he's trying to also ask that how can we have interesting variations. Because one of the very important things in harmony for all those all of my friends who already are acquainted with chords and stuff is a very important. We call it as inversions. Basically, inversions are like variations of the same chord. Playing notes in different orders. Then there's a very interesting study in jazz music, harmonic substitutions, which of course there's a lot of information available on the net. But what happens is that is something which could be applied depending on the song. Like I'll just give you a very simple example. Basically, harmonic substitution is something where you find an alternative to a chord which makes it. I'll give you a very simple example. So say if there's this for all my musician friends, if there is this very basic chord structure, C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. Now, how do we make this interesting? So I'll play something, and so I'll play the basic one again. Now if I want to substitute this, or I want to play something as a substitution to this, it could be I've just changed chords. So instead of course I've played C major 7, but I've played a different inversion. Instead of A minor 7, I've played A dominant 7 flat 9. I've kept D minor 7 the same with a different inversion, and I've played instead of G7, I've played G dominant 7 flat 9. So well, it's a lot of theory and a lot of things that there's a lot of information you will find actually in books and all. This is just a very small glimpse I've shown. But what I'm trying to say is that it's the application. And I would say that rather than playing a dramatic chord in the song, it should be a dramatic positioning of the chord in the song. So it should sound interesting at that place. Rather than trying to make a point, see, here I've played a very impressive chord. It should not be that. It should be rather that, where it comes is interesting. So it's the inversions and these harmonic substitutions that's what is important. But it should at the end of the day, it should benefit the song. It should make the song sound better. Nothing should be forced.
Gulraj, thank you for taking these questions, and
my pleasure. And I hope I've been up to the mark.
I'm sure, and we wish you all the very best for your forthcoming project.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And hope to catch you soon on another episode.
Looking ahead.
Bye.